This is the Right Now podcast with Sarah Werner. Episode 115. Is writing hard work? Welcome to Right Now, the podcast that helps all writers, aspiring professional and otherwise, to find the time, energy, and courage you need to pursue your passion and write. I'm your host, Sarah Werner. And this question of whether writing is hard work has been bouncing around in my brain for the past year and a half, maybe longer. Because I often struggle with what I do for a living, in the sense that I'm always asking myself, is this valid? Am I allowed to do this for a living? Is this a real job? And some guilt about, I can't believe I get to do this as a job. And then that's juxtaposed with the fact that, for me, writing started as a hobby. It was something that I did, I'm going to say for fun, but we're going to get into this a little bit more later. But it's something that I initially did for fun as a hobby. And the writing itself didn't change between being a hobby for me and being a job for me. The writing didn't change. And so I'm often very, very curious about what it means to write, whether writing is work or play or some kind of mixture of both. And if writing is fun and easy, why is it not fun and easy sometimes or most of the time? So we're going to sort through a lot of these questions and confusions today. Okay, because I'm a total nerd, first and foremost, I'm going to start off by talking about work. So what is work? I looked it up. Work is, quote, activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result. That's apparently what work is. So, is the act of writing an activity involving mental or physical effort done in order to achieve a purpose or result? Yes. We're putting in mental and, physical, because you're writing, you're typing, it's an action that you're physically doing with your body, or maybe you're even just dictating, in which case you are still speaking and that is an activity. It is a physical and mental activity that we do in order to achieve a purpose or result. That is a published work, a finished story, a poem that we can read during open mic night, a memoir. We do a thing to do a thing. So yes, by its very, very most basic definition, writing is work. So why do I have all of these weird hang-ups and questions and hesitations about writing as work? And I'm speaking for myself here, but maybe you have these questions too. Maybe these are things that you struggle with in the back of your mind, or maybe the forefront of your mind. Maybe this is something that you struggle with and argue with other people about, whether or not what you're doing counts as work. Why do we have these struggles? I think it begins with the idea that we don't all think of work by its very basic definition. So that definition that I just read to you, I don't think that's how most people think about work. So I got my definition of work from a dictionary, but if you look in a thesaurus, if you look up work, you'll find things like labor, toil, exertion, slog, drudgery, struggle, trial, grind, obligation, pains, salt mines. You don't really see any synonyms in the thesaurus, or at least when I looked on thesaurus.com, I didn't really see any synonyms for work that were positive. I didn't see anything like, a joyous fulfillment of one's true calling and purpose in life. Like, I didn't see that. I just saw the depressing stuff. But when I think about my life's work, I think about it in the more positive terms. I feel very strongly called to write and create, and fulfilling my purpose brings me a deep joy and satisfaction. Hilariously, the first antonym, so the opposite of the word work, that I saw listed was fun. That's how we think about work culturally, societally. Do we think of work as the polar opposite of fun? I think this is where my struggle begins to be articulated, is because I think of writing as both work and fun. And this is also why I feel so much guilt about what I do, because what I do, okay, this is so messed up, but writing is fun, but it's also a huge struggle and it's very frustrating. And we'll get into this a little bit moving forward. But I also feel like the way it's perceived by other people is that I'm just sitting at my desk, wandering through castles and like having imaginary battles with dragons and like making my characters fall in love. And it's the most fun and whimsical thing that I can do all day. And so there's all of these other people's perceptions that work is negative, that writing is just playing, it's lazy, it's whatever. And so there's just so much going on here. There's so much going on here. I also realized that I mentioned the word guilt. And if you want to hear more about writer's guilt, if that is something that you deal with or struggle with, go back and listen to episode 112 of the Right Now podcast. It's called Writer's Guilt, and I hope it will help you. We're also not going to talk in this episode about whether writing is the kind of work that deserves to be paid, whether writers deserve to be paid. I have a completely separate episode about this, as long as I'm referring you to other episodes. If you're interested in whether or not writers deserve to be paid, you should go back and listen to episode 41 of the Right Now podcast. It's just called Should Writers Be Paid? Spoiler, yes. And if you want to hear why, go back and listen to that episode. So we're not going to talk about financial compensation in today's episode of the Right Now podcast. But we are going to talk about, is writing work? Is writing play? Is it somewhere in between? Is it both simultaneously at exactly the same time? Is it neither? And why are we even asking this question in the first place? I started asking myself this question in the first place because I felt the need to justify what I was doing with my life. I've done all sorts of writing throughout my career. I've done content marketing. I've written for Forbes. I've ghostwritten 7 books. I'm always working on some kind of novel for myself. I lead writing groups. I teach writing. I have a published writing project in the form of a podcast called Girl in Space. It's a fictional sci-fi adventure. And recently, I've even been paid to write for TV. So from nonfiction to fiction and kind of everywhere in between, I've spent a lot of time writing. And I've also spent a lot of time explaining to other people what I do for a living and seeing their reactions, which are always very interesting. I've talked to people who themselves are writers and who I think are envious of the position I'm in. And when I speak to them, I can see that they're jealous or envious of what I get to do for a living. Because what I do for a living is what they do in their free time, usually in an unpaid capacity. And they do it because they're compelled to do it. They do it because they love to do it. And they wish that they could justify doing that and not having to also, have a side job or other means of full-time employment. And I've also talked to people on the other end of the spectrum. I've talked about this on the show before, but there is one person of my acquaintance who continues to consider me fun-employed. So this portmanteau of someone who is unemployed and who also just spends their day having fun, which is really insulting because I work really hard. Then there's the articles that you see online that talk about writing isn't real work. Being a writer isn't a real job. And these articles are all over the place online. And it's debated in a way that other jobs are not debated. So nobody says, is being a plumber a real job? Is being a zookeeper a real job? Is being a coal miner a real job? Is being a doctor a real job? Is being a teacher, is that a real job? What's going on here? True, a lot of writers don't make money. And that is, again, a whole nother thing. That's its own topic. And maybe it's simply because for so many people, writing is a hobby. But if you think about it, there are people who fix up cars for fun. But you would never consider someone who's a mechanic as not having a real job. So does it come down to the question of whether we enjoy our work? Whether our work is, as the thesaurus says, the very antithesis of fun? Whether work is indeed depressing, drudgery, toil, suffering, misery. I think culturally, we have equated for years and years and years. This is not a new thing. We equate work with misery. And we don't 100% know what to do with work that is fulfilling and, sometimes fun. I have another friend who insists that writing should be easy, since it was something that, I feel like I was made to do, and something that I feel compelled to do, and something that I feel called to do. It should be easy, she says very simply. And I think about her a lot when it's, 6:30 a.m. and I am trying to wrap my brain around how to make this plot move forward, how I can craft a compelling narrative that people will not hate, how I can craft believable characters who people will fall in love with and want to learn more about, how I can craft a world that is somehow understandable but also unique from all of the other worlds out there. I think about this a lot when it's 10 p.m. and my eyes are bloodshot. When I've been staring at the screen, beating myself up mentally, telling myself I'm no good, telling myself this is so much easier for other writers, or it looks easier for other writers. When I sink into despair and I wonder, why am I even doing this in the first place? I was thinking about this as I read a particularly, I don't know what the word I want to use here is. The word that first came to mind was vile, but I don't want to be nasty and name calling. So a particularly challenging piece of writing, ironically, about how writing is not hard work. And the author, to paraphrase, is basically like, writing is not hard work. Writing is fun. It takes dedication, but it's not hard work. Do you know what hard work is? Hard work is going into a coal mine and hurting your body. Hard work is performing surgery on a thankless patient. You're 14 hours in and you're sweating and you're miserable. That's hard work. Hard work is walking to the factory uphill both ways. Hard work is working in a fish cannery and slicing the guts out of dead fish. And yeah, I'm not going to argue that's hard work. And it's gross. And it sucks. And I don't think I am physically capable of doing it. I am not good at hard physical labor. I have a TEDx talk about this. You can watch it out on my website at sarahwerner.com. This article just upset me so much because what it does is it sets up a false dichotomy. It sets up this false construct of this but not that, of hard work is physical pain and only physical pain. Like, yeah, I get it, dude. You've had some bad jobs. You've had some physically demanding, terrible jobs. But that doesn't mean that what other people are doing isn't difficult. It doesn't somehow invalidate the fact that other things are difficult. It's really easy to get into a place where you are competing with someone else to be the most miserable. And that is a spiral I don't want to go down. Because all it does is lead you into thinking that you are a victim. All it does is lead to a victim mindset. And whoever is the biggest victim ends up being the biggest winner. I don't want to play that game. I've played it before, and it sucks. Yeah, compared to being in a coal mine, anything else is going to look like a cushy daydream. But that doesn't mean that those other professions aren't valid, and that they're not difficult in their own way and in their own right. You're not going to get a rejection letter if you're a coal miner. You're not going to live in a space where literally nobody wants to read or participate in or engage with your work. Again, I don't want to enter into this comparison competition, but I think that we're sophisticated enough that we can appreciate that different types of jobs, different types of hard work come with different types of struggle. And I want to reject the idea that work equals misery, that work equals suffering, because it's something that drags me down, and I think it drags a lot of people down. We become complacent in this idea that, oh, well, I'm making money, therefore I must suffer for it. And I know a lot of people are in jobs that are exactly like that, but we don't have to be. Thinking that work is necessarily misery and suffering keeps us trapped in jobs that keep us miserable and suffering, because we don't know that it can be better. We don't know that we can do more of what we want to do. But maybe the question comes, all right, Sarah, we've established that writing is work, but is writing hard work? I think it depends on the kind of writing that you're doing. I think it depends on what your definition of hard work is. Maybe writing is work, but coal mining is hard work. I can only speak from my own experience. But I think that working hard and being a hard worker are completely individualized. Hard work is a state of putting a lot of yourself, a lot of effort, a lot of strain into your work. And I think that some writers are hard workers and some writers are not hard workers. Just like some coal miners are probably hard workers and some coal miners are probably not hard workers. I think in any profession, you're going to get people who just show up to collect a paycheck. There's maybe a writer out there who does the bare minimum, who types out a lazy script and doesn't put a lot of thought into character motivation or world building. Someone who has been tasked with writing a script, and they write a script, and it is full of cliches, and it is unoriginal, and it is uninspired. They did not put in hard work. But then there are writers who invest themselves fully in their work. They hone their skills. They master their craft. They put in years of learning and education and reading and practice, so much practice. There are writers who are extremely hard workers. And the way that we get paid and the way that we get recognized is not always fair. And a lot of that's outside of our control. Some of the best and hardest working writers might be completely unknown. And some of the laziest writers might be making a ton of money. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is that, yes, writing is legitimate work. And often, it's very hard work. It's difficult work. It's frustrating work. It's thankless work. It's unpaid work. But if we do it to discover and elucidate meaning, and to communicate character and thought and dream and hope and vision, then I think that we're putting in the hard work. I'm left with a final question. Why do some of us do things that are really, really hard for fun? Like, why is writing a hobby for so many people? Why do we choose to do it when often we are not getting paid to do it? Why does that person who fixes up old cars, why do they do that work? Maybe for the hope of eventually selling the car and making money, just like the novelist eventually hopes to sell the novel and make money, but I don't think that's 100% why they're doing it. I think that it's very common among writers to have this sense of compulsion. Like for me, if I am not writing or creating, I am not happy. I am not satisfied. I am not fulfilled as a human being. And I get depressed and I get sick. It's very visceral. I think a lot of us find challenges fun. It's the reason so many people like putting together puzzles and reading mysteries. We like to be challenged. And in a way, it's fun. It's work, but it's fun. And I think that this is the concept that our society, our culture does not allow, because it's at complete odds with all of our ideas about capitalism and the ways in which we keep people struggling and living paycheck to paycheck in often very difficult and miserable jobs for less than a living wage. I love writing. Writing is hard work. These are both true. And I think both worth a lot more of our time and thought. Speaking of which, I am curious about what you think. I run several writers groups, and I so often see writers talking about how they struggle with explaining their love of writing to other people who are not writers, other people who maybe look down on them or tell them that their work is not valid. So I'm curious if this is something that you've struggled with as well, or something that you've overcome, or something that you are even just starting to think about. I would love to hear your thoughts. You can let me know your direct comments and thoughts over on my website, sarahwerner.com. That's SARAHWERNER.com. And you can navigate to the show notes for today's episode. It's essentially a blog post for today's episode. And today's episode is episode number 115. Are you tired of me saying the word episode yet? And it's called, Is Writing Hard Work? So go on out to my website, navigate to episode 115, scroll down to the bottom of the post, and you'll see a section for comments. I would love to hear your thoughts there. And I do respond to every single comment that comes through my website. I know in previous episodes of the Right Now podcast, I invite you to email me. Unfortunately, I'm in a place with email where I don't have the bandwidth to necessarily personally respond to every single email I get, but I do respond to every single comment out on my website. So I invite you to engage in conversation there. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about whether or not writing is work or hard work or whatever you want to talk about there. As you know, I create this podcast with the generous financial support of all of my amazing and beautiful patrons out on Patreon. Patreon is a secure third-party donation platform that allows people to throw money at me. I mean, essentially. Podcasting, just like writing, is work. And there are also costs involved in it, such as hosting, equipment, my time, all of that stuff. And so thank you so much to everyone who contributes, even $1 per episode. You are making a huge difference in making the Right Now podcast accessible to writers all over the world. Special thanks this week go to Amanda King, Laurie, Leslie Madsen, Regina Calabrese, Evie Knight, Garrett, Leslie Duncan, Sarah Lauzon, Sean Locke, Tiffany Joyner, and Tim Shen. Thank you all so much. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you. If you would like to become a patron on Patreon, it's very low commitment. It can be very low cost. Just $1 per episode or whatever you feel like the show is worth to you. You can just go out to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Sarah Ray Werner. That's SARAHRHEAWERNER. Or you can simply go to the show notes for today's episode out at sarahwerner.com and just click on the link that says help support this podcast. It will take you right to my Patreon page where you can make your pledge. Yeah, I bet you could be a patron if you could. She's just staring at me. Well, yeah. Thanks for listening. I am so glad. Yeah. Thanks for listening. I am so glad that you are a part of the Right Now podcast community. I'm so grateful for you listening. I invite you to, if you're not doing so already, I'm hosting ride-alongs, create-alongs every Wednesday and Friday evening at 7 p.m. out on Twitch. So I'm out at twitch.tv/Sarah Ray Werner. That's SarahRheaWerner. You can come follow me. But what we do is we sort of talk together as a community about the craft of writing. We write together for an hour in complete silence, or you can, play music on your end if you want. And then we come back and we talk about the experience, struggles, joys, wins, losses, all of that amazing stuff. It's been going strong for over a year now, and I really, really look forward to every Wednesday and Friday evening. So come join us if you can. Again, Wednesday and Friday evenings out on Twitch at 7 p.m. Central. And if you can't make it live, I do also have replay videos available out on my YouTube channel. So that's a lot of information. So come join us if you want to. It's just a really good time. It's a very warm and nurturing community. And I would just love to see you there. So, okay, with that, this has been episode 115 of the Right Now podcast, the podcast that helps all writers, aspiring professional and otherwise, to find the time, energy, and courage you need to pursue your passion and write. I'm Sarah Werner, and I'm going to go do some hard work.